Fenway Rundown Friday morning for 6 more minutes here on the West Coast. I'm Chris Cotillo, Sean McAdam alongside. Kind of literally, you're down the street in a different hotel.
Dueling hotel rooms.
Dueling San Francisco hotel rooms. I am ending my tenure here. I feel like a Giants beat writer after the week that was, and you are starting yours. We are going to overlap today for Rafael Devers' first game against the Red Sox and all the fun and all the craziness that will come as a result of that. So, welcome to the West Coast, Sean. I know you're going to be out here for about a week. I'm going home, thank God. We do have plenty to get to from the San Francisco developments, from the Seattle developments. We talked a lot on Monday and in writing on Sunday and all that stuff about why Rafael Devers was traded. So we don't really need to get that deeply into that. I think everybody kind of knows the story at this point. Um, but let's react to his press conference. I know it was 3 days ago, and I know that it's almost old news at this point. But Rafael Devers, in front of a big crowd at Oracle Park, including myself, says, I will play wherever the Giants want me. They are the men in charge. Yada, yada, yada. And there's a lot of nuance to that because, I wrote in the aftermath what changed. He doesn't have an ugly history of the Giants, in his words and his thoughts, lying to him and leading him astray. And so he was willing to move to first. And also, he doesn't really have the chips and the cards to play, right? But I think the big takeaway here, I said it on the radio a couple times. I think that that comes off as a verbal middle finger to the Red Sox. And I also think that that line and that press conference performance kind of completely swayed the public opinion on this thing. I think people were very anti-Red Sox. How could you trade this guy? Oh my God. And then they saw that and they said, Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And, people I think are more anti-Raffy than they were before that.
Yeah, I think it certainly impacted how people felt, but I have a hard time understanding how any Red Sox fan who's been following this closely would be surprised by his willingness to learn first base and ultimately play it here. I mean, it was so obviously driven by the ill will he felt to the Red Sox, the mistrust that he felt after how they handled the Bregman and Arenado pursuit last winter, all the dysfunction, I think, excuse me, that exists between the Red Sox and star players like this. This is not anything new. Um, and to me, it was the biggest slam dunk of all time that Devers was going to smilingly tell everyone here that he would do whatever the Giants wanted
Right.
because I think there was a message being sent. It was a little more than a little passive aggressive. It was, as you suggested, um, these guys didn't lie to me. These guys have communicated to me. I have nothing against the people who run the Giants, but the Red Sox, and we know the history there. So to me, they worry about earthquakes out here. That was not a tremor, even. I just think it was the most predictable outcome. I don't want to say I'm some sort of soothsayer, but I knew that that initial press conference was going to be all love and roses, and he was going to make it clear that this was a new start for him and that whatever ill will existed from his time with the Red Sox was not being transferred here.
Yeah. And, there was not just that, but I mean, the body language and all that stuff. People on Twitter have asked why I'm still here. Well, there's a big game tonight, and we wanted to be here for the press conference. So I've been around the Giants now for 3 days. I've been in their clubhouse pregame and postgame, and I've been around Rafi. And he is back to, the kid, the happy-go-lucky guy the Red Sox fans fell in love with. It's like a weight has been lifted off his shoulders. I think that's obvious. And, he doesn't have to be, the leader in San Francisco. They have Matt Chapman. They have Willie Adames, who's really taken that on, I guess. Again, Giants beat writer for a week. They have Logan Webb and Verlander and some of these other guys that it's an established culture. He's not the guy. He's not going to be asked to be the guy. He can just fit in, mash, play a little first base, enjoy the weather, take aim at McCovey Cove, and get paid really, really well. And I think since he's been here, is looking at this and saying, wow, like this is a great situation. I got my way. I had somebody tell me yesterday, Rafi's a good guy, but he wanted out, and we don't really know why. And things just took a really, 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 really sharp turn in the Devers Red Sox relationship. And one thing that I think, Jeff Passan just ran a real, deep dive into the whole thing. That it includes a lot of stuff we knew, a couple things that we don't or we didn't. One thing that had become clear, I think, to us that's in that story, and it's tough to like. I'm trying to figure out how we could have reported it. It's not like a headline that we're going to put out there like Alex Cora didn't like Rafael Devers by the end, but it just became evident in some of the conversations you and I have had the last few days that this wasn't Sam Kennedy and Craig Breslow and John Henry and Tom Warner had enough of Devers, and his loving manager was holding on to, please don't go, please don't trade him. It was across the board. I mean, talk
Yeah.
about everybody drink now alignment. Um, Alex Cora wanted him gone too, and that's, I think, abundantly clear. And if you look back even at the things he has said on the record the last few days, I mean, this is just, I think the organization was on one side. There was not really splintering by the end within the organization, and Devers was on the other. That's just become abundantly clear. And I also think, you know, uh, read between the lines on what guys said in Seattle on Monday. Read into the fact that only one, Rafael, who we know is a close Devers friend, wished him well on social media. I don't think that the clubhouse is in tears and in the fetal position over this one either, just because the distraction is gone. Obviously, they're a worse team. But, the more that you see and hear in the last few days makes you realize how messy it in fact was.
Yeah, I agree. And, I had somebody tell me throughout the week, someone who knows Alex Cora well, say one of the happiest guys in the organization is Alex Cora right now. And I don't want to oversell that and make it seem like Cora and Devers were sworn mortal
Yeah.
enemies by the end, but I think it's pretty clear he had become a handful. And remember, the whole issue with keeping Cora out of the, hey, what do you think about trying some uh, work at first base? That might be something that we could use here. They wanted to preserve the communication lines between Cora and Devers. So that's why Breslow was the guy who approached him. As we reported, they wanted to extricate Cora from getting into a messy relationship. If he had been the one to approach him, would that have damaged their relationship? So they wanted to preserve a line of communication between Cora and Devers. And even that didn't seem to work.
Yep.
And you get the sense that while there was never anything overt between Cora and Devers in their dynamic, that it wasn't like they were ready to throw down or they're hurling insults at one another, but the relationship had frayed in the last few months. And I think that was frustration on Cora's part that he tried to get the best out of Cora, out of Devers, that he tried to be in communication with him and understand where he's coming from, and it kind of went nowhere. And
Yeah.
I think Cora was highly frustrated by that inaction and the
Well,
inability to get Devers on the same page as everyone else.
yeah, you know what? Like the other thing is, it's probably a relief for him that he doesn't have to manage the situation and explain
Mhm.
it to other guys who might be asking and have this clubhouse thing lingering. I mean, again, it's hard to quantify that when something's off, or as Craig Breslow said the other night, something is a mess. I mean, we tried, and I can just tell you it was a tight group for a couple weeks in the wake of this, and there were some just things that seemed different. As people have said, Rafi kind of kept to himself, not just with us, but with teammates with his AirPods in, quick exits, all that type of stuff. Um, and so I could see players going up, and this is a guess, but I can see players going up to, you know, Cora and saying, "Hey, like, why does he play
Yeah,
by a
what's
different set
going
of
on with Rafi?
no, but why does he play by a different set of rules?
Hmm.
Like if you told, I don't know, some random player, hey, you're gonna go play this position, like that would probably be what would happen. With Rafi, it was no, I'm not doing it. Well, why is that? He's getting paid well, and what's going on here? And I'm sure that it kind of took a toll, even as the team was playing well in the last week or so, to um, have Cora have to explain that over and over and over. I mean,
And I'm sure there was some frustration in the clubhouse, which I'm going to guess he voiced internally in some of his remarks in the Globe today in which he said, I told them I'd play first base next year, maybe. It's not my fault someone got hurt. Well, no kidding. Who
Yeah,
said it was anyone's fault? It's never anyone's fault when someone gets hurt, but the team had a need. And his
right.
whole thing was like, I'll get there when I get there, maybe next year. Well,
Yeah. And you know what? The
maybe
other
next
thing,
year Tristan Casas is fully recovered. We don't know that's going to be the case. It
yeah,
may not be, but the need is now.
right.
And
The other,
there,
like, I don't really care on from his perspective of like, well, they told me that, this, and this, and I'll do like, I don't care about the particulars really. They don't interest me. Like your point that I am so rudely interrupting is that the need was now, the need is at present, and they needed him. They had designs on winning. Like, I'll do it in a year, or you're going to DH exclusively and not like whatever it was, and all the different, well, I'll get if this then that, like I just don't care. And I think those details are surfacing, and they just serve to make Devers look bad too.
that said, to do this fairly, the Red Sox, I think, could have done a better job salvaging this.
Yeah.
And however you want to frame that, whether it's better communication between Craig Breslow and the player or the organization in general, it didn't have to be double FUs from 50 feet away from both sides. They could have repaired this, or at least should have tried harder. And whether that's Breslow taking Devers and the agent out to dinner and just putting this all behind them at the end of spring training, at the start of the year, it seems like there were opportunities to try to repair this.
Well, I think they were okay at that point, though.
Well, I mean,
The first
they
base thing
were,
where it got to the
but but
levels.
but we also know that the origin story here is how he got treated over the winter
Right.
and how he was misled about their interest in Bregman and Arenado. So if that's what started to fester. And that's what, when they went to him with the first base thing, it's like, oh, here's another thing. Well, if you've already cleared up the first one, then maybe this isn't so insurmountable the second time around.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe you have established a line of communication with him where you can go back and say, hey, Rafi, remember when we went out to dinner, we talked about these things and what's expected and what's needed from a player of your stature? Well, this is one more thing, and blah, blah, blah. Whatever it has to be, it just seems like at some point, and this is only for people watching on YouTube, both sides went like this
Sean is crossing his arms for the
and
Spotify
folded
audience.
their arms and pouted and kind of walked away from one another.
Right.
And there was enough of an investment there on the Red Sox part to try to salvage it. And I'm not sure that every effort was made in that regard.
Yeah, my guess is once they got an offer where somebody was willing to take on the whole deal, they said, I mean, let's do it.
But it also came about pretty obviously as, if not a dictum or an order, it was like, we're going to move this guy.
Yeah,
It wasn't like the Giants came out of nowhere and said, hey, we'll take all the money and here's who we'll give you. They squabble about Eldridge being included.
yeah,
They can't get him. I mean, here's an interesting angle of this. If the Red Sox had said, we'll take 100 million back, but we need Eldridge, does the deal get done?
right. We'll never know.
We don't know about the particulars and what happened between Breslow and Posey, two former players now running their baseball ops department. Who knows? The Giants seemed to make pretty clear from the beginning that Eldridge would not be moved. But if the Red Sox had offered to retain more of the money, i.e., some of the money, could that have changed?
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, a lot of Red Sox fans' discontent here is not only that it came to this, but okay, you've made the determination you're going to move him. Why not get more in return? And how
well,
much of that was tied to,
yeah,
oh, all
all
the
of it.
money? Okay. Yeah, whatever you want to send us works if we can get out from underneath 255 million. And people don't want to hear that. They want it like, all right, if it's come to this where you think there's absolutely no way to repair this and he's got to go, then damn it, get more than Kyle Harrison, a reliever, and two prospects.
Yeah, and I think, I used this bullet with Brian Barrett on his pod. I wish I used it on ours the other day, but it came to
Yeah,
me the
way to
day
go.
after. I know. Good pod though. He does a good job. The when you look at the return, I think player A for the Red Sox is $255 million. Player B is Kyle Harrison. Player C is Tibbs. D is Hicks. Five is Bayo, not Brian, Jose. And the story of that trade, for now, obviously it's Devers, but it's going to be how they spend that money in whatever way.
Yeah.
And again, I said this too, I think with you the other day, but if they don't
I've
spend
done
that,
so many of
I
them this
know,
week, I
seriously, it's been
can't
a long
keep them
week, a lot of
straight.
travel. Um, I like if they don't spend it, then shame on them. Like
Well, and
there's
here's the
no
problem that we
way.
talked about earlier in the week. It can't be spent at the deadline.
All right,
People keep saying, "Oh, they'll spend." How? How do you spend $250 million at the deadline?
all right, you take on
You're either taking
eight.
on a horrendous contract from somebody,
Yeah,
which doesn't do anybody any good. What you have to do is identify another team that's got some inexplicable
right,
chasm between itself and their best player
right.
and take that's not happening. Now, maybe it gets allocated in the winter. Maybe they go heavy into the free agent market. Maybe they are big time players for Kyle Tucker. That would make some people feel a lot better.
That makes absolutely no sense with the
Well,
roster.
another left-handed hitting outfielder, exactly what they need. But I think we also assume that one of those outfielders is getting moved to address another need.
Yeah,
Might be at the deadline, might be in the offseason, but they can't go into next year with
right.
four outfielders, three of whom hit left-handed. It can't be done.
Hmm.
That's an area of strength and depth. They have to deal from that to address other needs. But this notion that, oh, just wait until the end of July, then you'll see where the money goes, that makes no sense.
Right. Let's get to in two different ways, Kristian Campbell. The first thing, it's unfortunate, I think, that he got dragged into this Rafael Devers story, and I don't think that there's much evidence that backs up that Devers was mad at him for moving to first, interfered there, or poisoned the well in that
Starting with the fact that he didn't volunteer, he was asked.
right. And Cora was quick to dismiss it. Devers camp, who's basically said, "Yeah, this got really ugly," but they were like, "That thing's not true." Passan reported that today. Devers, like, let's decouple this. It's important. It was important in the eyes of the Red Sox that Meyer and Anthony and Campbell and these young guys come up in an environment where the rules are set and you do what's best for the team, and that is something they discussed internally for sure. With that said,
And hinted at in the press conference.
very heavily, yeah. Um, but with that said, that didn't manifest itself in such a direct way with Campbell. I was going to go ask Kristian Campbell today directly. I don't know if he was in Seattle or not. I couldn't really tell. Obviously, we're not going to get that opportunity unless we go to Polar Park. So that's the first thing. Number two, he's in AAA. And this is something that you wrote about on Sunday, and you thought he was the odd man out. Then they traded Devers, and it seemed like there were spots. This isn't now about a logjam, really. I mean, it's a little bit about a logjam, but it's not as logjammed as it was the other
Yeah,
day.
they could have sent Nate Eaton back today to
Yeah,
make room for what we expect will be the activation of
he just was
Leader Three.
activated. They announced it as we've been rolling here.
Okay.
Um, so keep up. The but yes, Nate Eaton, David Hamilton, whatever. Um, but this is about getting, Campbell some of that seasoning, some of that minor league time that he never had. I think it's 137 games ever in the minor leagues. Um, Offense is going to come. We saw the streakiness, great April, bad May. Maybe a reset there is fine. To me, this is like 95% about defense, getting him settled at second base and kind of learning how to play defense in the pros, which the game really sped up. Chris Smith sent something to our group message the other day about it, and I looked it up yesterday because it sounded ridiculous. But Fangraphs has him as the worst defender at any position in baseball with a
17
uh,
minus
14,
17 defensive
14.
runs saved.
Yeah, 14, but close
14,
enough.
I'm sorry.
I mean, whatever it is, 14, 17, 12, it's going to be the worst in baseball. In terms of range at second, uh, first percentile, seven errors already over there. Um, he is athletic. It's just the game is sped up, I think, and he is not giving them what they thought. And when you see David Hamilton coming in as a defensive replacement in the sixth and the seventh and the eighth every single night, that kind of tells you something. And so that's what that is. I mean, there's a lot to get to on Campbell. It would be the number one story of the week, a lot of weeks, but it's not. But I think defense is the story there.
Yeah, I agree. Although he looked lost on both ends of the ball,
Yeah,
in the field and at the plate. I had a scout last week say, I don't see any difference with the swing. It doesn't seem physical with me. It's more mental. And I just think, this was a whirlwind for this kid.
yeah.
He makes the team out of spring training. That's a little bit of a surprise. He's in the starting lineup on opening day. He gets extended on a long-term deal. And by the way, let's not say that, whoa, the Red Sox screwed that up.
No, doesn't
This
matter.
this guy is going to be a good major league player. Alex Bregman has said it. A number of people have said it.
Yeah.
No one doubts his talent. He needs a reset, and he needs it away from the glare at Fenway Park in the big leagues and a playoff race. Let him go to Worcester, get his feet underneath him, get his confidence, start to be the player he can be again. And whether that takes a couple of weeks or a month or whatever, this is not Von Grissom. Like, this is your last chance. You better do something now. They believe in him, but he needs time. So that's okay. But I also wonder, does this mean David Hamilton becomes pretty much the everyday second baseman? Because that's not good from an offensive standpoint. This
I
guy
don't think
has an OPS of under 600. He looks overmatched at the plate. He had a couple of big hits early, one to help win them a game, but he is not an everyday player. He's got range. He's a great base runner. He's very fast, good base stealer, but you have to be able to hit somewhat, and he's not doing that. And I wonder if they're just going to roll David Hamilton out there for most of the time as the left-handed hitter against right-handed pitching, and maybe every once in a while someone else gets a start, or maybe Ceddanne Rafaela comes in to play the occasional game there, uh, against lefties. Having David Hamilton be in the lineup every day is a negative mark on a team trying to compete for a wild card spot. I don't mean to beat him up. He's just not an everyday big leaguer.
Well, I think it's about Meyer, and I think Meyer goes over there sooner rather than later. And I think Toro plays more third. Maybe Romy plays some third, and they start doing that. I know the defense at third has been good. And then that Bregman, when he comes back, whether that's in 10 days or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, Meyer goes to second, Bregman goes to third, and they figure it out from there.
Yeah, look, it's easy to figure it out when Bregman's back.
Yeah.
He takes
But
over
I
back.
think you're going to start getting Meyer in at second now, and figure out,
Well,
who you can
I
start
would hope
at
so,
third.
but I mean, it speaks to how poorly Campbell was playing
Yeah.
that Hamilton has gotten as much run as he had the last few weeks.
Yeah, and the defense has been good, so that's kind of the value there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't bring some value, but
Right.
he's not an everyday player offensively.
Yeah.
And look, we salute the run that they're on. They're 7-1 in their last 8 games, but in those 8 games, they have not scored more than 4 runs in any one game.
Mhm.
And to think that the pitching is going to be this good for an extended period where they can win every game,
Right.
2-1, 3-2, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I think you got to look at the sustainability there, and then what the lineup looks like. To if they can weather the storm without obviously without Devers now forever, but forever and Devers, but without Bregman, um, that's an inside joke. The Red Sox game notes have had the words "forever and Devers" on the front page for like 8 years, and so finally, forever is over. So Devers is gone. Bregman. He will be back in a couple weeks. Abreu back tonight. The line, if they can kind of weather the storm, and they did with 2 out of 3 in Seattle on a good series, which like it doesn't even feel like they've played games in my head because I haven't watched it. But it's a Giants and Guardians series all week, which has been scintillating. Um, if they can weather the storm with those guys out and get to a place where you get Bregman and Abreu back, remake the lineup for the 18th time this year in the middle of July, then maybe you go get it at the deadline. But I think it's a big ask, and again they did.
I think
Wait,
these next few weeks are critical until
yeah,
Bregman comes back. They've got to. They've got to continue to keep their head above water. They can't dip below 500 again. They can't go on one of those skids.
Right.
And it's not going to be easy. The Giants are a good team. Even the Angels are, they just took what, 3 out of 4 from the Yankees.
Mhm.
They're a 500 team, give or take. Uh, the rest of this trip's not easy. You got Toronto when we get back. Uh,
Harry Francona's Reds.
Yep. Again, a 500 team. You get a little bit of a break over the holiday weekend with Washington. They're bad, but to the All-Star break, which I think is probably the most optimistic you could be about Bregman's return, maybe
Yeah.
right before, maybe he comes back before the break, but they've got to tread water here and not slip back down a few rungs in the standings until he comes back.
Expectations for tonight before we wrap. Rafael Devers is talking to the media in 2 hours now. Um, Expectations for that and expectations for his inevitable home run. Who's it going to be off of?
Uh, let's not have any expectations about the press conference. There'll be a lot of turn the page. That's behind me. Happy to be here. Appreciated my time in Boston. Have a lot of people over there I still like. Wish them well, but I'm a Giant. There you go. I just saved you, you know, listening to the audio from that in 2 hours. There will be some variation of that. There'll be a few players who go out of their way to go over and give him the hug on the field before. I don't think it'll be any massive exodus from the Red Sox dugout to go out and welcome him. Clearly, some guys are not too disturbed by his departure. What he does on the field, he does have a flair for the dramatic. He is a guy that rises to the occasion when you look at the numbers in the postseason and how he performed against the Yankees over the years. So a big home run in the next 3 games would not surprise me in the least.
Yeah, people are convinced the Red Sox are going to plunk him, which is
No.
not going to happen. But you know what? If there's a guy who has an edge and who could do it, Hunter Dobbins does have that edge. And I'll try this one again. If you remember correctly, Hunter Dobbins' father actually was the one who started the brawl between A-Rod and Varitek in
Little known
2004.
fact.
Yeah, so watch the tape. He's there. That's the Fenway rundown for today. Sean and I both out here in the Bay Area. Me not for long, Sean for the long haul on this Red Sox road trip. We'll have it all covered on the site.